It's the Chinese New Year once again. Gong Xi Fa Chai. This is an amazing time of celebration for more than a fifth of the worldwide population. More than 2 billion people celebrate the Chinese or Lunar, as some people call it, New Year. This is a very significant cultural celebration that takes place across the world and specifically and in particular in Asia and including Southeast Asia. Basically, where you have plenty of Chinese populations which have moved overseas over time. So, why is the Chinese New Year so interesting? Why is it celebrated by so many people worldwide? Today, I'm going to explain to you how the festival works, why it became so prominent, and also give you a few tips based on my experience living in Asia on how to make the most out of this time of the year. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the Chinese New Year. So there is many people that try to give it some sort of timeline. Now, what we know for a fact is that the Chinese New Year has been around for the longest time, at least for 2000 years. It has evolved over time in terms of its duration, its dates. I will cover that in a minute, and also in terms of what is actually done during the Chinese New Year. Now, almost everyone seems to agree on the fact that the Chinese New Year is actually a way to celebrate the end of winter. In fact, in Chinese New Year, they call it Spring Festival. So it's an opportunity to welcome the spring, the season of where fruits, vegetables, crops flourish or at least are grown, and so to start that season off. So that's historically the reason behind it. Now there is also a few legends around the beginning of the Chinese New Year. I would say the biggest one involves the beast or monster Nian, which is some sort of dragon slash dog beast, which you will see if you have ever watched a lion dance before, and which I highly recommend you to do if you haven't, by the way. And so that's a mythological or legendary nature of the festival. Now, if there is one thing you will notice straight away if you are involved at all with the Chinese and with the Chinese New Festival is the prominence of the color red. Red is the favorite color of the Chinese. It signifies many things, but I will summarize it as indicating prosperity. The concept of being prosperous, prosperity, it's huge for within the Chinese culture. And just a quick side note, if you are into finance, something you'll find quite interesting is that for the Chinese, when a stock price goes up or there is profit, basically, right, money making, the color you use to denote that is red, which is exactly the opposite of what people do in the West, which where green is the color to use in this case. So you will see the red color is prominent, and again, if you go back to the mythological nature of the festival, it is said that the monster Nian was scared by the color red and by fireworks, right? Firecrackers, which are also quite prominent within the Chinese New Year celebration. So, how do you know when the Chinese New Year is taking place? Actually, it's not as straightforward as, say, Christmas, which I believe the majority of people watching this video will be familiar with. So, the Chinese New Year dates move every single year. Why is that the case? Because the celebration is based off the lunar calendar, just like Ramadan, for example, for the Muslims. So every year, right, given the fact that the lunar cycle is not as consistent on a yearly basis, the dates will shift. Typically, the Chinese New Year will take place let's say, between the end of January and the first half of February. Now, its duration is technically about 15 days. It starts with a family reunion, which is a big feast. It's a family gathering, and it ends with the lantern festival, which is also quite interesting. Maybe we'll talk about it in a new video. So that's why the exact dates of the Chinese New Year always move. In 2025, the Chinese New Year is actually very early on. In fact, it's taking place on the 29th of January, which is one of the earliest dates possible. And something else that you should take note, which is quite interesting, is the fact that every Chinese New Year is different because the animal that represent the year changes. So there is 12 animals. So the total cycle consists of 12 animals. And for 2025 specifically, you have the snake is the year of the snake. 2024 was a quite interesting year as well because it was the year of the dragon, which if you've ever heard anything Chinese, really, you will know that the dragon it's one of the favorite creatures according to the Chinese mythology. So the year of the dragon is typically when you see a spike in newborn babies, and because people really want their kids to be born within the year of the dragon. So this is a few, I would say, overall details about the festival. But what is the festival about? Overall, I would say that nowadays, what truly matters to people celebrating the festival, it's that reunion aspect, getting together with your family, with your parents, and with your relatives, and to get back together, no matter where you live. Over time, the Chinese diaspora has grown dramatically. Certain countries, for example, Malaysia, Singapore, have Chinese populations. In Singapore, the majority, which just stem from Chinese people moving overseas over the course of the past 200 years. So to this day, for Chinese New Year, specifically for the first day of the Chinese New Year, for Chinese New Year Eve, you have people all over the world traveling back home. Some people say that it's the biggest herd, if you will, migration of the year, right? Because you have literally millions and millions of people traveling across Asia and across the world in order to get back to their family, to spend time together. So what you will do during the Chinese New Year Eve is this reunion dinner with your family, spend time together. Some people may tell you also that gambling it's a big aspect of the reunion dinner. People tend to gamble quite a lot. Some people play mahjong. Some people play cards. It depends, but that's a big element of that. And then, of course, you will also spend the next few days visiting, right? Visiting your relatives, and again, spending time together. So this aspect of bonding, of community building is truly key, and also will say what makes the Chinese New Year so special for so many people in the world. Now, I wanted to talk about a few practical tips, especially if you have never been to Asia, and if you have never been to Asia during the Chinese New Year specifically. There is a few things that you should take note of. So firstly, as I was sharing with you, most people use this time of the year in order to spend time together with the family. Obviously, if you have a business, especially if it's a family business, well, you will spending time with your family, right? So you will have to close the business. So something you will notice in the countries where Chinese New Year is celebrated is that during Chinese New Year itself, most shops are closed. Especially when talking about F&B, right? Your restaurants, bars, etc. Especially during the first few days of the Chinese New Year, and after the few days prior to it, because people are preparing, right? They're doing spring cleaning, to be exact. So if you are looking at doing touristy activities during Chinese New Year, it may not be the best time for that. On top of it, as I was mentioning, people tend to travel a lot. I give you an example. Lots of people travel and reconnect with the family between Singapore and Malaysia. So if you are traveling at this time of the year, I can guarantee you that especially transportation flight tickets are going to be much more expensive than during other times of the year. So again, I don't recommend traveling or visiting Chinese majority places during the Chinese New Year. When I say Chinese majority places, what do I mean exactly? Well, you have your obvious, I would say, places, right, where the Chinese population is majority. So China, Hong Kong, Singapore, but also countries where you have either very significant Chinese populations or where you have a historical, I would say, connection to the Chinese. So there will be Malaysia, for example, Indonesia, where it's public holiday, the Chinese New Year, the Philippines, and there are for sure a few more. I believe actually also, oh yeah, Vietnam, of course. That's also a very big one. I hope this video helps you get a better understanding of the Chinese New Year, why it is such a beautiful cultural event, and also why it may not be the best time of the year for you to travel to Asia if it's the first time you're doing so. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and to follow the channel. See you in the next one.